So we're going to go now to Erin Diehm. So let me start by saying that Smithsonian researchers report that bird glass collisions likely kill 600 million birds in the United States every year. Birds used to crash into my windows, and birds likely crash into your windows also, even if you don't know it. So this is my big picture window here on the right-hand side, and you can't really tell, but there's an exterior screening on it that has just stopped the bird collisions against that window. And then my husband and I put in double hung windows and the rest of the windows around the house, which we hung exterior screens on, and that has also stopped the collisions. So Erin has been dedicated to creating habitat for birds for many years. She has worked to create a network of native plant pollinator gardens at a number of city parks in Berkeley. She has been an advocate for the installation of bird-safe windows. In 2023 and before, Erin attended more than 50 City of Berkeley planning and design review meetings advocating for the adoption of bird-safe principles in new construction. And in 2023, her advocacy resulted in the adoption of new bird-safe glass requirements in Berkeley's building code. And Erin's latest push is for an effort to daylight Strawberry Creek in Civic Center Park in the heart of Berkeley. And I wish you success with that project. In 2014, Erin and her husband began converting their own yard into a native plant garden, and they have now seen 25 species of birds and a dozen species of butterflies in their own garden. So today, Erin is here to show you about the steps that they have taken to make their windows bird safe.
So thank you so much, Kathy, for the introduction, and to everyone for attending today. My talk is how you can make your windows bird safe. And I wanted to start by giving just a couple of shout outs. First to Kelly Hammergren. She's been a critical ally in our campaign for native plants and bird safe glass here in Berkeley. And then my husband, Keith Johnson, who has been on the team to transform our yard into native plant habitat and now is our expert bird safe installer. And also the Golden Gate Bird Alliance for initially authoring the Bird Safe Berkeley Ordinance and seeing it through to the very, very end. So here's the agenda for my talk today. First, I'll give an overview of the problem. Then I'll review some of the guidelines for solutions. And finally, I will share some of the bird safe treatments that we've applied to our own home. Now, this has actually been mentioned a couple of times already, but so you've already heard about this, but 5 years ago, in September 2019, a groundbreaking study was released and it looked at bird populations since the 1970s. And the results were unexpected and shocking. The scientists found that the number of breeding birds in North America has declined steeply. In fact, since the 1970s, and I was alive then, I imagine many of you were too, more than 1 in 4 birds has disappeared. And we've heard this number that's almost 3 billion birds. So I always like to think about how things are, how does it all relate to the bigger picture? And so to put that into perspective, 50 years ago, there were 10 billion breeding birds in North America. And that's illustrated on the left in this chart. And if we follow the red line down to 2020, we see that the number is now down to about 7 billion. And to quote the director of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, John Fitzpatrick, this is a staggering loss that suggests the very fabric of North America's ecosystem is unraveling. So some pretty heavy words. And even common birds are disappearing. But we can do something. And what can we do? Well, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology has outlined 7 simple actions we can take to help birds. And Glenn Phillips just gave us an excellent presentation on one of these actions, and that is to use native plants along with some of the other solutions and actions we can take. And now we'll talk about how to make windows safer. We know there's many factors contributing to bird declines, like habitat loss and development and agriculture. So why do we talk about windows? And again, this is a number that we've mentioned already, but that's because bird glass collisions are responsible for a loss of up to 1 billion birds each year in the United States alone. And as this article says, glass facades are the main culprit for billions of annual bird deaths. And as new homes and businesses continue to be built, unless we take action, the number of deaths will only grow. But the good news is that this is one problem where we can address right now. Kathy showed the photographs, and where we can have an immediate positive impact. So people often ask, where are most of the collisions happening? What kinds of buildings? And many think that skyscrapers are the biggest problem. but data show that they contribute to less than 1% of all the fatalities. Mid-rise buildings, that are 4 to 11 stories tall, account for 55%. And finally, and this is kind of a big surprise to a lot of people, 44% of the collisions, so that's almost half of them, they actually happen at the low-rise buildings like businesses and our homes, and that's really why we're here today. So this begs the question, why do birds collide with glass? Well, there are several factors, but there are two primary ones: the reflection and transparency. With reflections, birds see the reflection of the vegetation, the trees, the bushes, or the sky, and they think they're real. They fly towards the image, but they crash into the glass instead. And the ironic thing is, as we're adding all this habitat around our homes, that habitat can often be the same level as the windows of our homes. So they can actually make our homes a little more dangerous. The second reason is transparency. Birds cannot recognize glass as a solid object. They see through the glass, perhaps at vegetation or sky on the other side, and they try to fly to it. But instead of reaching the trees or plants, they strike the glass and are sometimes mortally injured. Commercial buildings often include additional threats like rooftop glass windscreens. These are incredibly popular right now. And that's the photo on the left. Or skyways and walkways and glass walls. And that's the photo on the right. Many people have told me that they've heard or seen a bird strike on one of their windows, but the bird flew away, so it must be fine. Unfortunately, that's not usually the case, and I kind of want to dispel that myth. Up to 50% of bird collisions leave no evidence at all, so there are many more collisions happening than we realize. And what people don't see is what happens afterwards. Birds can hit glass at speeds of 25 to 30 miles an hour. Many of them suffer concussions or internal injuries. And if they fall to the ground stunned, they're vulnerable to predators. And if the bird flies away, there's a good chance it will succumb to its injuries days later. And if a parent bird is harmed, the young may not survive either. But again, this is preventable and we can take action. My talk today is about window and glass, but I want to share one slide on light pollution. That's because it's a significant problem too. And that's because many birds migrate at night. And unfortunately, artificial light at night can draw birds into our urban areas where they can face many threats. Some things we can do to minimize light pollution is to make sure that exterior light fixtures are fully shielded and on a timer or motion detector. We should avoid bright lights, use amber tones, avoid the cool blue light bulbs, and lastly, pull blinds and shades at night. So now let's talk about solutions. One of the main actions we can take is to make glass visible to birds. There are many ways to do that. New glass can include screens or incorporate patterns like etching or fritting, and that's the photo on the left. Down below is existing glass. It can be retrofitted with a wide variety of treatments, and that's what we're going to talk about today, like screens, paints and markers, parachute cording, tapes, dots, and films, and that's just to name a few. And you can see a few of these treatments in the photo on the right here. And one note about UV ultraviolet treatments, and I learned this recently, that actually not all birds see in the UV, so they don't actually protect all species of birds like raptors and pigeons. Plus, it tends to be quite a bit more expensive, so for us, the UV was not really a consideration. Here are the guidelines to ensure that visual markers are effective. Treatments must be applied on the outside or exterior surface of the window. Markers need to stand out, have strong contrast, and be no smaller than 1/4 inch. The entire glass surface needs to be covered, and the markings need to be separated by no more than 2 inches by 2 inches. Now, the image here shows the 2 by 4 width, which is for songbirds, but there's newer data, and we're trying to protect all birds. So 2 by 2 inches is now the accepted standard, and that's to protect especially the hummingbirds, the smaller birds. Here's a diagram of a double pane window. I thought it might help to emphasize that treatments need to go on the exterior of the window. So that's sometimes called surface 1. And if treatments are applied behind surface 1, so on surfaces 2, 3, or 4, it's likely that they may be ineffective. And that's because the reflections off of surface number 1 will prevent the birds from actually seeing them. Here are some treatments that are common, but are often not effective solutions. And on the left are decals. And even if they are applied on the exterior side, They often are not effective because they're spaced too far apart. They don't adhere to that 2 by 2 rule. So birds still think they can fly through. If you think about a bird flying through a tree, they can fit through the small spaces in between the limbs. And on the right are interior treatments, including blinds and shades, and they often don't work. And it's again because of the reflection. The reflection off of the glass keeps the bird from seeing what's behind it. So where can we go to select some treatments? Well, the American Bird Conservancy is the authority on bird safety, and they have a very helpful webpage. The web address is simply abcbirds.com, and of course, Audubon Society and Golden Gate Bird Alliance also have some fantastic resources. The ABC website even has a database for different kinds of treatments. You can slice and dice the products using different criteria. And here I've got it filtered for homeowners and retrofit glass. The database only includes products that they've tested and rated for effectiveness, which you may want to consider when selecting treatments for your home. The effectiveness is called the threat factor, and it ranges from 1 to 100. And in a nutshell, the lower the score, the less likely a bird is to strike the glass. So the better. So it's kind of like golf, you want a low score. And I can share more details about that during the Q&A if folks are interested. But here you can see that there's a list of 36 products for homeowners that want to retrofit glass, and oil-based pen is listed at the top. Now I want to share with you some of the treatments that we've applied to our own windows. You know, when we're approaching this as if our home can be a demonstration house for bird safe treatments. So we're treating all windows, but not everybody needs to do that. Even though every window is a threat, we suggest starting small. If you know which windows have had bird strikes, start with them. And if you haven't heard any strikes, there's probably some still happening. Start with the windows that are especially reflective of vegetation and maybe the sky. And lastly, we do understand that cost is an important factor. So just a heads up that that information will be at the end of the deck after we've reviewed some of the treatments. First, our external insect screens. Several of our windows are traditional double hungs, and they came with these. And we're thrilled to have them because they're an excellent treatment. And Kathy had mentioned that too on her windows. So they're long lasting and extremely effective with a low threat factor of 1. You know, I really couldn't think of any cons, but maybe for some folks, the screens, they're not really crazy about the aesthetics. Here are 2 photos from our home from our home from the outside and the inside. Now let's look at something that people may not know about called Acopian blinds. And they're named after the man that came up with the design. This is actually the first window that we treated. We had 2 separate warblers strike on this window. And we had taken each bird to our local wildlife rescue. And so thankfully, they both survived. But we really couldn't stand the thought of our window harming another bird, so we took action. These are Acopian blinds or bird savers. And they're one of the cheapest options available. And their website has fantastic DIY instructions. You can actually order them from them, or you can DIY. And if you want to build them, it just requires a trip to the hardware store for some parachute cording. And in our case, we used a piece of PVC trim across the top. But also, if for those who have been in the Scouts, if you know how to do knots, you can actually just do an all rope treatment. The blinds last a very long time, and they're fast and easy to install. They're very effective with a threat factor of 5. Here are 2 photos from the outside and the other from the inside, looking out onto our backyard. And I really like the photo on the left because it shows the dangerous reflection of our tree. You can kind of see it through the cording. And we put these up a couple of years ago, and you know, at first we did notice them, but after a few days, they just kind of blend into the background, and they actually kind of sway. They're kind of relaxing, and they're also called Zen curtains.
It's really a piece of cord that's tied to a rope, and the cord just hangs and moves in the wind. Is that correct?
That's exactly right, Kathy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually, they have some great videos, how you can just make it yourself. Or like if you're good with knots, you can just have the rope across the top and then have the cording hanging down at the intervals of 4 inches. And 4 inches is actually effective even for hummingbirds, they said, for this particular treatment. Okay, film. These windows are covered with a white perforated film, and you can see out just fine from the inside. But from the outside, it looks like a solid surface to a bird. And these 2 photos show them from the outside and then in the lower right from the inside. The film's manufactured by Kaleidoscape, and the model name is guaranteed because it is so effective at preventing bird strikes. The threat factor is just 3. You can see in the photo here, our homes are close together. So we chose this product to give us privacy during the daytime. And we put it on both the upper and the lower windows. It was really easy to install. It just took a spray bottle of water, a squeegee, and a box cutter. And to do this side of the house took us between 4 or 5 hours. We kind of had to get into the groove because we were doing it for the first time. Each sheet did have a backing on one side, and we had to peel that off and throw it away. So there was a little bit of waste. But now let's look on this is the north side of the house, and now let's look at the south side. So here on the south side, we used the same perforated film, but we chose one of their tinted colors. This is charcoal, and Kathy, I think you have the charcoal on your home too.
We do have the charcoal on our big picture window. That was when I introduced Erin. That was our window that has charcoal kaleidoscope screening on it.
Yeah. And we really like it because this is actually our driveway side. So people come up and down the driveway, and the gray color is really not very noticeable at all. It kind of just blends in, almost looks like a regular window from the outside. And as an aside, these perforated films are very helpful with energy conservation. And they actually help reduce the heat gains by 50 to 60%. And it does reduce the amount of light in the interior a little bit, but not that much. And we actually don't really even notice them now. And frankly, it's completely worth it to keep the birds from striking the windows. But here's the most exciting thing about the perforated film, and that is you can have a photograph printed on the film. We chose a woodpecker and gray hair-streaked butterfly that we had photographed in our back garden for the windows of our back door. And honestly, we are absolutely in love with the tree. I love to go out. This is our back door. I love to go in and out of it now. And in the slide here, the photo on the right shows what it's like to look out that door. And you might see there's a bird bath just 6 feet away from our back door. And in the past, we didn't want to scare the birds, so we would actually keep our blinds down. But now we leave the blinds up and we can come and go up and down our stairs, and the birds don't see us, and we can just stand there and watch them bathe and splash. And honestly, it is such a joy. We just love it. Now we decided to try a dot pattern. There are many choices out there, including feather friendly and kaleidoscope. And here's an action shot of Keith installing kaleidoscope sheets of dots. And we decided to go with a sheet because we thought since we were doing the whole side, it might be faster, but at this point, I'm not actually sure it was. The sheets are 1 foot by 5 feet, and the dots are 1/4 inch in diameter with 2-inch spacing. The dots are a little less effective than the acopian blinds in the perforated film, but they're still very good at preventing strikes. One thing we weren't crazy about with this kind of sheets was that it did generate a bit of waste because there's 2 layers of backing for each side of the dots that you end up throwing away. Here's a photo looking out of those very same windows. It was a very, very sunny, clear day here in the Bay Area. And so one thing we're now learning is that there's the outside facing of the dot, which is white, but also the inside of the dot is white. And so it is a little bit bright when the sun is really strong, but when there's cloud cover at all, it completely blends in. So again, at first we noticed them, but now we don't really see them. And honestly, we actually think they're kind of handsome from the outside. Now we wanted to try another kind of dot, one that was actually dark colored on the inside. And I don't know if I can point. I don't know if you can see my cursor here. So this is the inside looking out, and you can see it's kind of darker color. And we want to see what that's like visually for us. So we purchased a product from a kaleidoscope, and it's called their high performance dots. It's made from the same material their film is. The dots are a little bit bigger. They're a 1/2 inch in diameter. And then you can see here, they come on a roll with a single row of dots instead of the sheet. So you can choose the spacing on your window, but of course 2 inches is best for the hummingbirds. We actually purchased this for our window just recently, so we haven't installed it yet, but we're really excited to put on the windows, see how long it takes, and how it looks from the inside with the dark colored dots. Feather friendly is another excellent product. We haven't installed it on our windows, but I wanted to be sure to include it today because it's effective and affordable. It comes in several different formats. A single roll of 1/4 inch square markers, and it's kind of different, or a sheet of round dots. There's all these different choices. The photo on the right here shows someone applying the DIY, that's the actual product name, DIY version, which is a single roll of square markers. And the threat factor is good at 23, and the product is rated to last at least 8 years. And by the way, for all these products, I just want to encourage anyone to go to YouTube and look at installation videos. There's all kinds of people have put these treatments on their windows, and that's exactly what we did. We would go watch a few videos, and we got all kinds of great tips and tricks to help us apply them, and then know what it would be like to apply them. Okay, here's the last treatment we'll apply. This is homemade artwork on a window, and it's extremely cheap, and depending on the pattern, very, very effective. And we found this a fantastic website that outlines exactly how to do this. It actually goes back to FLAP in Canada, which is one of the bird organizations out of Canada. And it includes how to print and use patterns like this bird you see here in the lower right. And that's for those of us who are not very artistically inclined. And of course, this could be an absolutely fantastic project for children to mark on their windows. The website suggests using oil-based markers, and they actually show a Sharpie, an oil-based Sharpie. But tempera paint or soap can work just fine too. And this could probably make it the cheapest solution of all. Finally, we know that cost is a consideration. So here's a table of these treatments and the cost for each, going from the least expensive at the top, the markers and the Acopian blinds, to the most expensive at the bottom, which was the custom image film. We include the cost per square foot, and then the cost for a 3x4 or 12 square foot window. That's actually a pretty big window. Most of our windows are not that large. And as you can see, the cost ranges from $10 to $83 for a 12 square foot window. And, in the end, we'd like to have all the windows treated because every window is a threat. But again, just a reminder, you may want to start small and focus on just a couple of windows that are the most problematic. And I actually think for our back door, I looked it up, the door is like 2 feet by 5 feet, and I think that was around just $55 in the end when we paid for it. And which depending on people's budgets, that may or may not work for them, but it's quite a bit of joy. So thank you all that you do for birds. And I hope that this information is kind of introduction. I hope it was helpful and inspiring. And I hope that you all feel empowered to take action to protect your windows, protect the birds from our windows.
All right. Thank you very much, Erin. That was a fantastic presentation. And I want to thank you for not only putting together, but also for the cost information and for showing us all the different varieties. So we're back here again at my picture window on the right-hand side. And I saw that somebody had posted like, I don't really know if I like the looks, but I have to say the Kaleidoscape charcoal screening, which is what you see here, it's just a screen. Like we don't see it at all. And we remodeled our house in 2020. And in the 6 months prior to our leaving, 3 birds that I know of hit our windows. And, it's just horrible. And we were putting in even more windows when we remodeled it. And we were determined that we were going to solve this problem. We were not going to make it worse. So we chose double hung windows specifically because we could put in exterior screens. We put on the Kaleidoscape screening when the scaffolding was up, because this is a second story here. And we have had no bird collisions since we moved back into the house. We work in our home. I work at home. So, I'm home more than more people. Like you might not think that you're having bird collisions, but it could be happening when you're not at home because there's still all that glass sitting there when we're out shopping or working or whatever. So I want to say it was easy to do, and it's just been such a relief to know that our windows are not a hazard anymore. So if you would like help designing and installing a native plant garden, you might want to contact 4Dimensions Landscape Company. 4Dimensions is an award-winning landscape company whose motto is restoring the earth, one garden at a time, and whose goal it is to bring people and nature together. 4Dimensions creates well-planned, carefully crafted environments that enrich both human and natural life. You can call on 4Dimensions to design, build, or nurture your garden, and you can reach them at 4dimensionslandscape.com or at 510-893-1999. So we'll go now to the Watershed Nursery. This is a fun photo of the entrance to the Watershed Nursery. If you've been there, they're located in Point Richmond. You'll know that they have cheerful and welcoming signage. The Watershed Nursery is a woman-owned native plant nursery founded by Laura Hansen and Diana Benner in 2001. Their team grows hundreds of species of California native plants with the highest level of phytosanitary best management practices. to prevent the spread of harmful pathogens into our backyards and natural spaces. You can visit the Watershed Nursery to learn more and see what's available. The nursery is open Tuesday through Sunday from 10 to 4. You can shop in person in their large outdoor nursery in Point Richmond, or you can place an order for curbside pickup. If you're looking for a practical gift for a friend, consider purchasing a gift certificate. You can reach them at sales@thewatershednursery.com or at 510-234-2222. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us.